Hi, my name is Sachi,
I'm Manav.
and welcome back to our new series of dialogues where we try to deepen and complexify dialogue on social media and try to offer some different perspectives on important current events. And we hope you'll join the conversation when this video ends. Today, we're discussing recent events on the US southern border crisis, so asylum seekers from Haiti, the violence that's been going on, and the government's response.
So the most recent wave of Haitian immigrants at the US border are fleeing the country after the most recent 7.2 magnitude earthquake that happened recently. However, Haitians have been seeking asylum at the US border for decades. But the incident that we're talking about in question happened when a video surfaced of Border Patrol agents on horseback hounding Haitian migrants near the US-Mexico border underneath the Del Rio Bridge. They were using racial slurs, grabbing the t-shirts of a migrant, and generally mistreating the migrants who were attempting to cross the US-Mexico border.
It is really disheartening to see, and it's even more disheartening to consider like how long this whole situation has been going on. And I think uh, the situation in Haiti has been so incredibly bad recently, especially with the recent assassination of their president, the earthquake, COVID, everything has kind of just like culminated into then what like resurfaced in that video. And it was kind of a wake-up call. I mean, we know that stuff like this has been going on, but to see it visually represented like that was really kind of crazy.
I think the lack of empathy is really appalling, both from the Border Patrol officers and other people who were defending the actions that took place in the video, because these people who have been fleeing their country, like people don't think about what it takes to leave your family, leave your home, leave the only life you've ever known, to cross the ocean and then cross multiple Central American countries where the US government has literally set up traps to attempt to catch you and send you back to your home country, and where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gangs, there's a lot of cartels. Everyone is trying to take advantage on you on your journey up through Mexico and Guatemala. And to do all of that, to arrive at a country where you might not even speak the language, you have no clue what's going on. People don't take the time to really empathize with that type of situation, understand if people are making such a ridiculous decision, why are they doing it? It's because the circumstances back where they're from are just so awful that they feel as though there's no choice but to flee.
Right. And I think this is the like immigrant narrative. It's all about like sacrifice and really weighing between your two lives. And the reason so like thousands and thousands of people do ultimately make that decision with all of the hardships that come with it and all of like the uncertainty that they're risking is just goes to show that they're willing to risk that journey. They're willing to show up to the border, then live in their home country, whereas the situation is really beyond what we as Americans can really conceive of, because there isn't a lot of media coverage of what's going on, and it's kind of just a bunch of like hearsay, but we really don't understand what it is like to live in a situation like that.
I think you're right. I think most Americans are really disconnected from the situation that's going on in Haiti. I think in recent years, our news coverage has become more focused on America and less focused on
Yeah.
international affairs. I think people are more focused on their own problems instead of problems going on around the world, and therefore really don't understand why these people are coming here. They only have
Mm-hmm.
their own internalized racist notions to go off of, and that's where I was looking to go next. These Haitian immigrants have been really mistreated for the entirety of the time they've been coming to the US-Mexico border and trying to gain asylum. For 40 or 50 years, they've been coming here and being treated than other asylum seekers from different countries.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I think this these like underlying racist or even explicit racist perceptions that Americans have or like Border Patrol has towards these immigrants is true for all of these refugees that are coming from Central and South America. This isn't just something that's unique to Haiti, and it isn't just something unique to even Central and South America. I think that's true for other continents and other countries as well. But there is this other like factor with refugees that are coming from Central and South America, which is that they're fleeing really violence. They're not coming specifically for economic prosperity or something, or to gain education. They're really just trying to survive. And I think although we as Americans like recognize that there is a terrible situation going on, I think this general notion that they're going to try to live off of like the welfare in the US is completely unbased and false. And it creates a very different perception of these refugees than those coming in through other means.
I think this is generally true with any majority Black immigrant group, like the lack of empathy and the mistreatment. Like you didn't hear anyone saying, why are we letting the Cubans in the 1980s and 90s when they were fleeing the Castro regime, them because they see them as an other, someone they shouldn't care about. And I think that's an unfortunate fact of today's society.
That's where like the notion comes in of like, why can't you just stay where you are again? And we get into this whole other cycle of like, how we really just don't realize the situation there, and how, you know, the sacrifice that they truly are making to go all those miles. And like Mexico's like border response has been mirroring like the US so much more now. I don't think people realize how much like Mexico itself is trying to crack down on refugees coming in through the border, and how people even crossing through Mexico have made like these incredible like risks and sacrifices to come to like the Texas border, to come to Del Rio, to come to that bridge. And then they're just treated like absolutely inhumanely for all the sacrifices that they've made.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. I just wanted to first point out that the exact words used in the video by a Border Patrol officer were "get out now, back to Mexico," even though the immigrants weren't coming from Mexico. But I think it's representative of what you were talking about earlier when you were saying, why can't you just stay in your country? Why are you coming here? Why are you bringing your problems here? And it's because, as we were talking about earlier, they just don't understand what their problems are and why they need to flee with them. And then your second point about kind of the US outsourcing its border patrol to Mexico, that's really what it is. Like during the Obama era, like immigration at the US border declined significantly. The amount of refugees coming there declined significantly. And that's because like they wanted to keep it, like it was becoming such a crisis that they wanted to move it out of the US eyesight. So they funded a bunch of like, they essentially funded border patrol that happens at the US border. They moved it down to the Mexico-Guatemala border. They moved it throughout Mexico, creating a bunch of checkpoints that people moving up had to go through because they didn't want migrants coming in. They also didn't want to explicitly say at the US border that we're going to mistreat migrants. They just wanted to move it out of the public eye.
So like, how does the US kind of address the root of this problem? They are sending aid to Haiti and other countries in Central and South America, but the aid that they have been receiving has been declining over the years, and the situations in these countries has only been getting worse.
So I think the aid declining is really because of like the nationalistic fervor that's arisen in the US over the
even
last
under the Biden administration, like it hasn't gone away.
If we really think about like past administrations, every administration has really gotten progressively more nationalistic, except I think probably Trump to Biden. But Biden stayed pretty nationalistic. Like his campaign was about what he can do for the US, even though he's been predominantly known throughout his career as a foreign policy expert. The campaign was all about what he can do for the US, how he's going to improve the US economy. And he really hasn't scaled back any of the Trump era policies that restricted aid to other countries, let fewer immigrants in, because I think he recognizes that the majority of the country is actually really opposed to helping other people, like other countries, because they see so many problems within the country. And I think that's led to aid declining. I think it's led to like this type of policy, because even though Biden will go out and say that what's happening at the border is irresponsible and that it's inhumane, and so Kamala will repeat that, and Jen Psaki will repeat that, nothing actually gets done about it.
Yeah, I think not only with the aid, but like the border policy, is still pretty much the same as Trump's was. He's still using, I think it's called, I think Title 40, 41, 42
I
comes
think
up a
it's one
lot
of
when you
those two
read about
numbers.
this issue. Yeah. And it's kind of, it's obviously a clear excuse. Like, it's basically claiming that since there is a public health crisis, that border officials can just deport or expel refugees on basically that basis. But when you compare that to the US's like COVID response, how like all like mask mandates and stuff like that have been really like receding, it's a clear excuse.
It's
Like,
really unrelated,
yeah,
and it's an abuse of what the law was meant to do.
yeah.
Like, they're declining refugees on the basis of a public health crisis that is greater in the US than the countries that these refugees are coming from. They're not really
Mhm.
bringing anything that's not already here. It's just an excuse to decline immigrants. And
So what should the US be doing? Like, what should Biden be doing? Because there is this fact to reckon with, which is that we can't possibly, it would not be realistic, possible, or even like beneficial to, for like at all the parties involved, to allow every single refugee that comes to the US's doorstep to be able to enter the country, because we're talking about tens of thousands of refugees that are at the southern border. So this really is it's like a predicament that doesn't have a great solution to it. Some of the solutions that have been brought up are extending or like increasing the cap on refugees to allow more to be waiting in that area. That brings its own slew of problems. There's also something known as like a deferred and forced departure, which was used previously, I think by Bill Clinton, to kind of increase like the amount of time that refugees have to kind of gain their footing before Border Patrol really gets at them. So there are some solutions, but they have their own problems. They don't really solve this issue that the US has been reckoning with for like decades.
you're right that it's an open-ended question. I think both of us really recognize that what's going on right now with them turning away every single refugee on the basis of a public health crisis, when it's really not about public health, is quite wrong and inhumane. But you're also right that there really isn't a solution, because we can let every one of these people in, and there's no good way to ascertain who needs help more than other people, because as we talked about earlier in this conversation, every one of these people is fleeing a completely inhumane situation back from where they've left, because the path that they've taken to get here is so arduous that they're looking to escape such awful conditions at home that they're willing to take this path. And if you have a bunch of people who have completely inhospitable, inhumane situations back in their country of origin where they came from, how do you ascertain who has to return to those situations and who is allowed to come into the US and who we're giving asylum to? Because it's obviously better to give asylum to some people rather than no people. But
Mhm.
who are those some people that we're going to decide deserve asylum?
Yeah, because really only a fraction of the people affected by this situation are even making it to the southern border. And then on top of that, we can only accept a certain portion of those people. And you're right. I think some action is better than none action. Helping some is better than turning away everybody. But really, I don't think there is a great way to determine who is able to get in and who isn't.
I think there are a lot of solutions that are just kind of thrown around that really don't make as much sense when you really look at them. Like, there's always the solution that's thrown around. There are like two solutions, both I think are quite problematic. I think the first, more problematic one is just turn everyone away because we have to
Mhm.
focus on ourselves. And I think that stems from a lot of racist rhetoric about these people committing crime and being harmful to US communities, when statistically they really commit less crime than people who live in the US. But I think the second solution that tries to be helpful, but is also problematic, is just fix the problems in their home countries. And that's such a simplistic response to a complicated question. Like, you can't just fix the problems in Haiti. If they could, they would have been fixed by now, because the problems have existed for so long. People have been so ingratiated in poverty. There have been so many natural disasters, and everyone is fighting for power in a power vacuum. The US government can't go in and fix everything really quickly or as efficiently as people would hope.
Yeah, but I do think something the US could do is stopping to exacerbate the problem, because they are doing that with a lot of the arms trade in these countries. And obviously that's like a huge problem that the US really isn't reckoning with themselves. They don't realize how they are they're like part of the product of this entire crisis, and like what they can be doing to mitigate it. But yeah, I think this is definitely something that uh, all US citizens should be keeping an eye on, looking for solutions. But there definitely is something that we can do to make the situation better.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
we shirk our responsibility to these countries that we've played a big role in where they are now and the problems that exist within their country. We've played a big role in that, and we shirk our responsibility to helping their citizens. I think you're right. It's a really open-ended question. Are no good solutions, or not that there aren't any good solutions, but good solutions will take a lot of thought to come up with. And we encourage all of you to be thinking about this. We're definitely going to be thinking about it after this video ends and doing some more research and discussing, because this has really provoked a lot of interesting discussion and a lot of things that I want to do more research on after talking to Sachi and getting her opinion.
I totally agree.